Hi there, it's Phil here from Bodoni, North America. Today I'm going to talk about colour bars. pressSIGN 11.3 has introduced new features to the colour bar designer, so I thought it was a prime opportunity to go through some of those new features. One of the features includes the ability to randomize your colour patches, and this is really useful if you have some specific requirements for your spectrophotometers, which I'll go through a little bit later in the presentation here. But you also might be using some custom colours and need colour patches that are required for just that particular print job. So this is a great way to show you how to design colour bars for custom print jobs and custom colours. Now, as a proviso, I would say that you should have a look through the existing library of colour bars that are available in pressSIGN, because in most circumstances your requirement will be catered for. But in the case that you think you need a custom colour bar, this will show you why and how you need to be able to build those colour bars. As an example, you might have an extended gamut with specialist tint requirements. That might be one reason that you'd need to create a colour bar. You might have sizing restrictions for both the media or the actual packaging job itself that restrict the amount of colours that you can put into a bar that you can then measure with the spectrophotometer. So these are good reasons to create colour bars in this sort of special circumstance. I just want to show you some of the spectrophotometers. None of these spectrophotometers have the ability to know how far along a colour bar that they've actually measured. That means that they require a particular layout of colour bar, and the layout requires either high contrast between each patch so that the spectrophotometer knows that it's moved on from one patch to the next, or it might require a thing called a contrast bar. Now, pressSIGN has the ability to build in contrast bars, and I'll show you that as well. And most colour bars you see available to you commercially include contrast bars, especially if they're being used in the digital or the proofing arena, but commonly not in print production arena. So here we've got the X-rite I1, 2 and the 3. We've got the two versions of the SpectroDens. Indeed, there's a new version of SpectroDens available as well from Techkon. And there's the Konica Minolta Myiro device. All of these would require a contrast bar or high contrast between the patches that you are then measuring. So let's move straight into pressSIGN. pressSIGN shows you automatically the colour bar that is being used. That's quite obvious to see here, and the colour bar is shown in this area here. The colour bar that is actually being used in this job is the original colour bar that pressSIGN includes, which is just at the bottom of the screen there. But you might see that there's a couple of patches that have moved. The paper patch just over here exists just below the cursor here in the original colour bar. So we've moved the paper patch colour. That's then joined together these two, but then indeed what we've been able to do is add some spot colours and the tints of a particular spot colour. So those kind of things are the sort of things that you're likely to need to do when you're producing a customised print job. So let's jump straight into how to create a colour bar. There's a couple of ways, of course, in terms of launching a job in pressSIGN, but you can very easily go to the job settings button in the top right hand corner, and that brings up this window. And in this window what you'll see is the colour bar option just here. That colour bar option has a drop down, and the drop down includes many different colour bars. Indeed, they go far off of the screen here. But what I'm going to do is go back to any, and what we can do is create a colour bar. So we'd normally be going to this new add button. So let's click on that. If you already have a colour bar, let's say we choose the traditional pressSIGN colour bar here. If you want to edit it, you can. You just simply go to the three dots here, click on that, and that will then bring you to the color bar dialog box. It shows you the run of the colors that are on the color bar already, and it will allow you to see those in a vertical format here. And here indeed you can see the balance of the colors that are included. So here this is simply a CMYK color bar with mixes, so for your red, your green and your blue. So you've got cyan 100%, a 25% magenta, a 75% yellow and a 50% black. In this color bar there are no spot colors at all, and if you wanted to edit one of the colors you can simply go down to the color bar list at the bottom here and click that color, and that brings up that color in the vertical menu. And of course you can select the color in the vertical menu if you want to as well. You can also double click any of the values and change the value in this vertical menu, so you can make as many different mixes of colors as you like. You can also go in, and if I select the bottom color here, I can create a new color mix by typing in values in this area and then finally clicking on the plus button, and that would add that color to your color bar below the patch. You can also add spot colors as well. So we've got spot colors here. You'll be entering the tint value. So for instance, you'd be typing in 100 or 50 or 75 or whatever tint percentage value you want in that area. Clicking on the plus button, and again that will add that color. So the routine is that if you copy a color here and then you move somewhere other than the very last patch, it will put the color above the color that you've selected. So if I've copied this dark blue, if I go and select the red, it will arrive above the red. So if I paste, you can see it's gone above the red. I can delete that here. But if I wanted to put that blue at the very bottom, we select the very last patch, click on paste, and it will arrive below the last patch. Okay, a little bit of an anomaly. If you want to get a color in there, the thing to do is to paste it there, select it again, paste once more, and it arrives above. And that's your little bit of a tip as to how to do that. Let's now go back to create a brand new color bar all of our own. So I'll cancel out of this, and I can click on the button here which says it's plus and it's just a new color bar. So we'll start with a brand new clear dialog box. At the top we've got a target value just here. Now the target has a CMYK target value, and you can select from any of the targets that you currently have visible within pressSIGN. The reason that you have a target there is purely for these patches here, the grey balance patches. The grey balance requirements for different target standards are different. So when we select a grey balanced patch for the job, pressSIGN needs to know what the mix of grey is. So the amount of cyan, the amount of magenta and the amount of yellow, they would vary based upon the target that you're choosing. If you're choosing a typical G7 target, then which this one is, if I show you the highlight values, we're looking at 25, 19, 19. The medium values are 50, 40, 40, and the shadow values are 75, 66, 66. That would vary if you were not choosing a G7 standard, or you had a customized standard that was based upon G7. Maybe they'll have changed the values there, or a different target standard altogether may well have different grey balance values. I can select all of those colours in the colour bar by shift clicking and hit the delete button to get rid of them. So the way that pressSIGN works in terms of building a colour bar is very easy. You simply press the button on the screen and that colour will appear in your colour bar. So we've got a new feature that allows you to be pretty slack in doing this. In the past, if you wanted to create a color bar that was able to be read by any of these previous spectrophotometers, you'd have to be really careful about the way you created it. Now we can be a much more slack, because we've got a button that will randomize those patches, and it will randomize them so that you've got as big a contrast between them as is possible for that particular color bar. Okay, so let's say that we've got black, and let's start down here. So I'm going to add each of these colors. So I've gone 2550, I can go cyan, magenta, cyan, solid magenta, each of the tint patches, yellow. Here we have a series of slur patches if you want to include those in your color bar. You might have a random non-required patch as well, but we also have a P patch here, which is for paper, and you'll always need to have a paper patch in your color bar somewhere. So I'll just add that there now. And for good measure, let's say that we've got a spot color as well. So we've got a spot color here with the various colors of the tints included. So we've got a color bar here that shows all of those, and for the time being I'll leave out the grey balance just because I don't need it. What I can then do is I can say that I've got a number of rows, and there's one row of colours that we can quite easily see here. I've got the size in terms of the height and the width of each individual patch, and the pressSIGN will give you the full bar length and the height over here. So you've got the full bar length of all of those patches adds up to 126 millimeters. We can say that it's a non-repeating color bar, so this would typically be used perhaps in a digital environment or anywhere where you don't have a full sheet. And what a full sheet means is that you're repeating that color bar many times across the width of the press. Typically you wouldn't have a color bar with these patches in them at that situation. You'd normally have a black, cyan, magenta and yellow solid, and then you'd have one or two of these items within that sort of color bar. But we don't need to worry about that at this particular moment. We're going to go for it being a single non-repeating color bar. So if I'm using one of these spectrophotometers, it simply wouldn't work if I generated the color bar with these colors, because it would not know when I've left the yellow 25 to the yellow 50. It simply wouldn't know unless I either built in contrast bars or I had a much bigger contrast between each of the patches. So we have now got a new button, which is just here, this little delta sign. And that delta sign will randomize the patches for us. So let's just do that. If I click on the button, watch how the patches reorganize themselves. So you see that pressSIGN has now magically reorganized the patches to give them as great a contrast and as big a chance that the previous handheld spectrophotometers have of being able to recognize that they've moved from one patch to another without having contrast bars in the mix. You might not have room for contrast bars in a lot of situations. The contrast bar is typically a 1 millimeter wide patch. You can see it on maybe here. This example shows the contrast bars. Indeed, there's actually a black and a white one between each of the patches in this on this ID Alliance wedge, which is typically used in the proofing arena. But here we've got cyan 75%, 50, 25 and 10. Without having contrast bars there, most of those devices would simply not be able to read this color bar. So going back, we've now generated this wonderful color bar. I could, if I wanted to, produce some additional variations of that color bar. If I were to click on one of these buttons here, So this bar here will move the last patch to the first patch and swap the two over. So just watch when I click this button, and the yellow 50 has now become the first patch and magenta 75 has become the last. If I flip it back, you can see how that's happened. This patch here is really being used in the world of having multi-line colour bars. Let's open up a multi-line colour bar. Perhaps if I am able to say that this is a 2-row chart, let's just add another colour in there. Go to the bottom and I'll add a slur. So there's a slur, black slur in there, and you can see that the way that pressSIGN shows that. If I now use the rotate button, watch where this green colour goes and the magenta here. So if I rotate it, essentially the green has gone to the top and that magenta has gone below. So we've now got vertical. If I rotate it 90 degrees once more, it comes back. So we've got the green here and the magenta, and the slur is now the top left. So let's move it one more time. So the slur will be at the bottom here. And you can see that it's actually there. And one more time will bring us back to where we started. So it gives you an idea of what you can do. So you can actually say how many rows you've got in pressSIGN for those patches. I'll go back to 1 and I'll highlight the slur patch and click on delete. And then I can simply click on OK. So let's name that colour bar. I'll call it CMYK mix with spot tints. Okay, and I can say where it's going to be available if you're in the GPM world, whether it's global or at particular sites. I'll click on save. So now that colour bar appears right here as CMYK mix with spot tints, and it's going to be in my list with all of the other colour bars that I've got available to me. If I now want to export that colour bar, I would click on the button just here to export it on the right hand side. So I'll click on the export button, and here we will be able to export that colour bar. So again, I can say that the colour bar is going to be used at any site that I have on my list. This shows the target standard available. I can still confirm that it's single non-repeating. This is the name of the colour bar, and I can here say whether I want to add contrast bars. Now we call them i1 Pro contrast bars, but they're actually valid for all of the other spectrophotometers that I spoke about just here. So all of these require contrast bars if you can add them to your colour bar. So contrast bars are available within the colour bar generator of pressSIGN. You can get pressSIGN to automatically put a colour in between the patches. pressSIGN will gauge whether it needs to use a black or a white bar, and as I say, those contrast bars are 1 millimeter wide, or you can simply say you want a contrast bar between all of the patches. At the moment I'll say none, and here we can specify how we want to generate the colour bar. Now if we generate an IT8 file, that means that we can send the colour bar to someone else for them to create and generate the look of the colour bar itself. So if I click on generate, that will do that. And we've also got a couple of other press situations where the colour bar is required for Heidelberg's image control, which is an FMS file, or Komori and IntelliTrax, where it would be a CBL file. So we can generate either of those two file types from this menu. Here we can say that we want patch labels either above or below the colour bar itself. If I turn that off, then we'd get no patch labels. Just as you see here, we've got patch labels below the colours on the bar itself. So here it actually says that we've got 100 cyan and yellow and 75 magenta and 25 yellow. So those appear there, or you can say that you don't want them at all. and you can generate a PDF or an EPS file. So PDF will allow you to obviously print out that colour bar and put it onto your printed job. You then would click on the generate and it will generate that colour bar for you. So I hope you found that useful. If you've got any requests, leave a comment in the description below, and I look forward to being able to help you in the near future. Bye for now.